My name is Terrance Hurley. I'm an associate professor at the University of Minnesota in the Department of Applied Economics. Raising production over time and space is an important aspect of the problem, an important facet of the problem. But stability of yields and production over time and space is also very important. Economists typically think of risk in terms of variability in crop yields, and it's variability, but it goes a little bit beyond that. There's also the risk of coming up short with a crop to where you don't have enough to feed your family. What I'm working on HarvestChoice right now is to look at how abiotic factors like weather and biotic factors like pest and disease affect the riskiness of production in Sub-Saharan Africa. Well, our goal is to understand how these factors influence risk, and then also to look at strategies that farmers can use to mitigate or reduce that risk. For example, changing the time that they plant their crops, changing what crops they choose to plant, or just changing the varieties of crops they choose to plant. Also, they could potentially use fertilizers or pesticides to help manage some of these risks. Some of the recent work we've been doing with this climate data we've picked up is looking at exactly that. How does the risk vary spatially and temporally in Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa? And then we've been doing some comparisons to the U.S. And for example, we find that on average, the precipitation that they receive in Sub-Saharan Africa is pretty much the same, or if not higher, than what you see across the U.S. in terms of ag production regions. But it is much more variable over space. And so you do see a lot more variability in terms of things like weather, in terms of precipitation and temperatures and those kinds of things in Sub-Saharan Africa than you do in the U.S. A big difference between farmers in Sub-Saharan Africa and farmers in the U.S. is that farmers in the U.S. have lots of different tools available to them to help them manage risk and deal with it. Crop insurance is a very good example. Farmers can plant a crop and insure that crop, so if they do have a crop failure, they have money that's paid to them, so they can go still buy the food and feed their family. Sub-Saharan Africa, a lot of these tools don't exist. They don't have insurance markets like they have in the U.S., so farmers are much more likely, if they have a crop failure, that they could very well have troubles feeding their families. Yeah, the pest work, in terms of figuring out where pests can be and how likely they are to persist, is really breaking new ground. There really hasn't been a very comprehensive evaluation of that like it's being done in HarvestChoice. In the U.S., one thing you see is you get very harsh winters, which people in Minnesota are well familiar with. You don't see that in Sub-Saharan Africa. What does that mean? It has very important implications in terms of managing pests. In Minnesota, we have natural pest control. Every year we have a very harsh winter that works to kill off a lot of our pests. And in Africa, if you look at the data, you don't see that. So for pests, it's very much easier for them to persist over time and tougher to get rid of them because of that persistence.